which is as follows. Only speak when invited to by the committee chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. You can either physically raise your hand, but there also is a raised hand function in Google Meet at the bottom of the screen, indicated by the hand symbol. Will everybody please ensure their mics are muted when they're not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their microphone. When speaking, please be succinct and do not exceed the allocated timeframes highlighted at the start of the hearing, contained within the agenda pack in the procedure note. If you're having any technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting or dial in the phone number. Please don't use the chat function to put formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from this meeting. If there is any more than one application, which in the case of this meeting there is, parties are advised that after each application is heard, in turn, to retire after the end of their item. Applicants and all the parties will be asked to leave the proceedings after the item is concluded. So that is the end of the remote meeting protocol. So we'll begin with the first item on the formal agenda, which is the election of a committee chair. Councillors, please. Over to you.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Rout.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lufkin. In that case, I'll take it from here, as they say. So if we can just quickly, we have no apologies for absence because nobody is absent.
That's correct, yeah.
I do need to ask whether or not Councillor Lufkin has, and indeed myself, have any declarations of interest. I don't.
I don't either.
Good, okay. We have no minutes from a previous meeting which we have to consider, so we can move straight on. And so at this point, I will just quickly run through the procedure for what we can expect to do this evening. Now, what we'll do actually first, before we do anything else, is we'll just go around everybody who's in the virtual room and introduce ourselves. And then we will hear from the licensing officer, who will outline the first case that we're going to be listening to on the agenda this evening, which is for the baths. The applicant will then present their case. They'll have 5 minutes to do that. We'll then hear from the responsible authorities who are here in attendance to present their cases. And any other persons, if there were any other persons, would also be invited to put their case. And we will then have a discussion. We've got 15 minutes designated for that discussion. At the end of the discussion about the baths, then the chair, that's me, I will ask the responsible authorities and other persons, and indeed the applicants in that order, to make their final comments. And the subcommittee members, myself and Councillor Lufkin, have the opportunity to seek any final clarification, and then we will generally take away the whole thing to decide what we're going to do, and you will be notified about what we're going to do probably tomorrow at some point, and we're in writing shortly afterwards. Same procedure for then the second item on this evening's agenda, which is the Tricolore Pizzeria. So I hope that's clear. Anybody got any questions about any of that? And if not, then let's just quickly introduce ourselves. I'll start with myself. My name is Penny Root, and I am the one of the councillors representing Victoria Ward. Richard?
Hi there, I'm Councillor Lufkin, and I'm one of the councillors representing the Shakawa Ward.
Good, thank you. Perhaps if I could just ask everybody from the council side of things to go through and introduce themselves first, perhaps starting with Amanda.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda North. I'm a solicitor from Legal Services supporting members this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Suba?
Hi, I'm Subhash Ramana, Principal Licensing Officer, who will be presenting the report today. Thank you.
Thank you. Channing?
Hi, I'm Channing Riviere, Principal Licensing Officer, making representations on behalf of the licensing authority today.
Thank you. I should mention I'm not going to ask David to introduce himself. David Tuitt works with licensing as well, and he's here as an observer this evening. Gareth, we've already heard from, and we know who he is. Just looking on my screen, is there anybody else here from the council?
Chairman, I am from the council, but here in an independent capacity. I'm from Strategic Property Services, Howard Hilliard-Ains.
Thank you. We haven't met before, Howard. Thank you very much. Mario, I should mention, is our technical support, who is here to make sure that we don't fall offline, as it were. So now let's have a look who else is here. Amanda Griggs, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, Chair. Yeah, it's Amanda Griggs here from Police Licensing.
Thank you. And I think then at that point, it's just the applicants for the first item who need to introduce themselves. We'll come to the applicants for the second item once we've got through the first one, if that's all right. So that's you, Neil, is it?
And Mateusz was on the screen as well.
Sorry, we missed the
so just to
beginning.
introduce myself first.
And you're with somebody else who's assisting you, are they?
Yes, so this is Martin, who's a local resident, and yeah.
I'm going to be helping with the front of house function. I worked at Passing Clouds for 5 years on front of house. We've got several good practice procedures that I'm hoping to graft onto what we do at the baths, which I'll go to later.
Okay, thank you. Good. In that case, without further ado, let's ask Suba if she would be good enough to introduce the item for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for the Baths 80 Eastway to seek permission for regulated entertainment, late night refreshment, and to authorize the supply of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises from 9 to 1 a.m. Sunday to Thursday and from 9 to 5 a.m. Friday to Saturday, as stated within the report. Representation remains from the police, licensing, and one other person. We have received some proposed condition from the police, and this document has been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll move straight to the applicant to hear from them, please. So if you would like to put your case in 5 minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Neil McDonald. I'm one of the founders of Stour Space, which is originally in Tower Hamlets on Fish Island, so in the Fish Island area. That venue started in 2009, and we've operated a license there longer than pretty much anyone else in the area. The licensing hours there were 9 until 1 weekdays, and then Friday, Saturday until 2 a.m. We rarely used the full extent of those hours because our entire operations is about creating social and environmental benefit. We're not a funded organisation; we're a non-profit, and there are multiple organisations. This particular one is Civic State Limited. Excuse me. And essentially, our main kind of focus is about interacting with communities and creating kind of social wealth. We've done that through a number of different venues in the area and outside of this area as well. Our main operations really surround such activities as workshops, creative and affordable workspace. We have the most affordable workspaces in the area and have done for the past 15 years. We also offer different education services, voluntary programs, and health and wellbeing activities. In the Baths, which is a project I've been working on for the past 5 years, which has suffered greatly through a number of different things, especially COVID-19. We essentially have kind of over the past year recovered from some quite difficult times, especially with regarding disconnection of utilities, which has been an ongoing thing with Hackney Council and Strategic Property Services. So we've rebuilt then an entire new team and created a really strong ecosystem of social benefit activities. Now, because we're not a funded organisation and never really have been, we've always traded to generate income. Now, all of those activities are all socially beneficial in one way or another. So, for example, the late night events that we want to host, we only do it with long-term partners because we don't want to do one-off things that are damaging to us, our reputation, or our neighbours. So those are Beauty and the Beat, which have been going 15 years and operated in the yard, and here over this past year through TENS licenses, of which I think there's one complaint in October, which is a very confusing complaint. It doesn't really make sense, but I can get to that later. And Giant Steps. Both of those have their own very strong reputation to uphold as well. The sound systems they use are of really high quality. They are pretty big, but that means that you can talk to each other during the thing. We take sound level readings of all of those things. Now, I'm aware that 5 a.m. seems quite a drastic thing. Now, that's mostly because those two partners, that's part of their brand. It's part of their family. It's what they've done for the past 15 years, and we really want to support that. It also means that we get to generate a decent amount of money, which helps us fund a lot of projects. Now, our lease, or the one we're about to re-sign with the council, with property services, requires us to do many things. Basically, spend around £100,000 on renovating this building, which is a public asset and will stay with the property. It also needs us to create quite a substantial amount of jobs, which we've already done, as well as provide lots of services and opportunities to engage. Now, as we're not funded and as we need to provide a lot of refurbishment to this building, as well as create all these jobs, as well as pay past debts that this building's incurred, including throughout COVID, we do need to be able to generate revenue in these ways. Now, we don't expect to be running parties every Saturday, every Friday, every day. That would damage our reputation. And essentially, we need the flexibility to be able to use, at least on the Saturday. I'm happy to reduce hours on the Friday as well, but Saturday is important to be able to have that 5 a.m. We have a really strong event and security plan to make sure that our dispersal of neighbours at that time is really effective, and we try to keep people inside the building and give them coffee and stuff at the time too. So it's a really pleasant dispersal. There's a few other things. For example, the Street Property Services suggested that we should not have the license because of planning. Now, after speaking with Hilary Wren from the LLDC about this property and others, because it's such a small amount of usage for this type, then it would be considered an ancillary usage. Regardless of that, it's a different department of law that would require, which is irrelevant for this license application anyway, but it is noted. It isn't outside of that planning use because it is of such a small, it was permissible use. Now, with the weekday times, we're also happy to reduce those if that helps as well. We would like it to go to 1, but I'm happy for it to go less. And that is mainly that we have saunas and wellbeing classes, and after those people finish, we'd like to be able to sell them a beer or two. But we're about creating social wealth, which is about positive social connections, not those ones which kind of are getting people drunk. Like I say, it damages our reputation and my personal reputation, as well as the founder of many non-profits in this area, including the Hackney Fish Island Community Development Trust. So it's a 15-year kind of career I've had in this area, creating social wealth, and also being one of the largest funders in this area for over the past 15 years. So we'd like to be able to continue to do that. We've used all of our TENS this year. I think we've done it really effectively. We've had a few complaints here and there, which we've addressed with neighbours, and we'll continue to do so. Again, this is very much about our ability to trade as a social benefit organisation, and we'd like your support to do so.
Something. As such, I'll be taking a temporary role in charge of front of house. My experience of that was I worked at Passing Clouds for 5 years. There was never a police incident in all the time I worked there Friday and Saturday, and they had a license till 4 o'clock. We've just employed a new security firm that are much more amenable than I've used them for years. They're, instead of searching somebody and violating them, it's more like a cuddle when they come in. I mean that in a nice, non-threatening way. People come into the venue with a smile on their face. I want to speak to all the local residents and give them an opportunity with a dedicated response line that will be manned there. And if there's any problems, they know that they can ring us and it will be dealt with straight away. We will be checking the decibel level every hour and basically just trying to communicate with our neighbours and the people around us. I got involved with this space because they do a thing on a Sunday called Sweet Sundays, which provides a meal, hot tea, and allows people to do poetry in an open mic. It is the only thing I know of in London at the moment that's actually free for people to go to. You don't need any money to go there. And this is the sort of thing that the alcohol licence will support. And I really hope the committee can see that we're trying to do a good thing here and help us.
Okay, thank you.
May I add?
I think your time's up, but I don't mind being a bit flexible. Have you got something else you wanted to say?
Thank you. I was just going to comment that most of the activities that we do here are sober activities, intoxicant-free, yoga, meditation, ecstatic dances, and also the community sauna baths, which are based here as well. The sale of alcohol really is to kind of supplement the ability to provide those services. I'm sure I've got lots of other things to add to, but I'll leave it there and happy to answer any questions anyone has as well.
We'd also be banning all, sorry,
go
just
on.
to say that we'd also be banning all smoking outside and making sure that anybody that queued for taxis was in a place where it didn't damage the local residents when they left at any time.
Okay. I have a few clarification questions which I'd just like to get in at this stage, and possibly Councillor Lufkin does as well. Would you like to go first, Councillor Lufkin, or shall I go first?
You go first, if that's okay. And
okay, you pick up anything that I miss, if that's all right, then, if that's good. So my first question is about capacity. So there's a capacity that the building apparently can take up to 700, according to the documents here, but you're looking for a license for 500, but you're not expecting to have tickets for more than 350. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Although obviously there is a part of me that thinks, why are you asking for a license for 500 if you're not going to issue tickets for more than 350? But perhaps we'll come to that later on. I'd also like to ask about the off-license request. I can see from what you've said why you might want to sell alcohol on site, but why the off-license? This isn't a retail business, is it? So why the off license?
Shall I answer now? Sorry.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
It was mostly so during COVID-19 when there was lots of lockdowns and there was some relaxation on off sale of license. We just wanted to keep our options open for that, but it's not something that's imperative. So I'd be very happy to remove it if that's desired.
Okay, that's good, because I think that is likely to be something that we'd be asking for. I think it's a completely different sort of business model, really, isn't it? It's, and you know, heaven forbid that we don't have to have any more lockdowns and what have you. But if we did, then I guess there would be other circumstances that came into play. Couple of other things. I just wondered how large was the capacity at Passing Clouds, given that you're obviously relying quite a lot on the experience of the front of house manager there?
It depended on the night. At some about 250.
About 250 was the capacity. Okay.
May I Martin has joined us. Well, he's been part of the events, the Sweet Sunday poetry events for quite some time. And part of having Martin as part of this organisation is to bring in a lot of past experience. But it's also we should also say that previous to this as well, we've kind of operated with that 350 capacity. As that's mostly why what we are comfortable with in terms of like ease of space around people, not having people crammed, any congestion in certain areas of the building. And maybe to touch quickly on the 500, we mainly put the 500, or I thought it was 499, just to align with the 10s more than anything. So I'm happy to bring that down so it's all consistent. But it was mostly just about aligning with the maximum 10s event. It's also to do with so we have quite a large garden area. So the hall is a really large hall, really large garden. There's a lot of really quite large spaces. But if we want to do late night events, then obviously we close the garden earlier. So we normally close the garden at around 9 o'clock, if there's any kind of music at all, and therefore, obviously, we can't kick out a load of other people at that point. So we tailor it to make sure that the maximum amount, if it's a later event, can only be that 350. Now, it may happen in the daytime that there might be more people there, but then that would only really happen if we weren't going to be having a later event, because otherwise we'd have to close the garden and start kicking people out.
Okay, that does bring me on to another area of clarification, actually, which is the garden area outside. As things stand at the moment, if I recall rightly, you're asking that there isn't a specific limit on the time, or if there is, it's quite late. Would you be willing to have a time limit on the garden area so that and that you're suggesting 9 o'clock?
Absolutely.
Would you be happy with that?
So you cut out a little bit there. Sorry, what?
So the suggestion is 9 o'clock limit for outside activities, as it were.
So I would. So it depends what activities it is. So, for example, if there's music, then we close the doors at 9. But we often have really quiet events. Like, for example, sometimes we have breathwork workshops, which are part of the saunas. And again, it's about health and well-being. Now, those activities take place outside, and they can take place up to 11 o'clock. Now, there's only, say, like a maximum of 24 people to be able to use that at any one time. Normally, it's a little bit less. So we want to be able to utilize the garden as is appropriate. If there are music events, so there'll be no music outside after 9 o'clock, but we'd still like to be able to utilize that garden if it is a calm event, and we manage that with our.
Okay, let me explain. I mean, I think we might have to come back to this in the discussion phase, because I don't want us to get too involved in this. But what I would just flag up is that we have to come up with a license which is enforceable, and anybody who's living locally who hears noise from the garden, albeit not necessarily musical noise, but some noise at 10:30, they're not to know whether or not what sort of event it is. So I can see that we could have some problems around that, and we might have to look for an hour which could work for you across different events. But we'll talk about that a bit later on, I think, if that's all right. Yeah, okay. The reason I asked about Passing Clouds is because I take the point that you're making about having somebody with extensive front of house management experience. It's just that if Passing Clouds is only a venue for 50 people, then we would view that probably slightly differently to the fact that the venue was capable of taking 250.
It was a long-term, one of the largest music venues in Haggerston. It's now the Jago.
No, I do know where it was. I just never happened to set.
And the only reason I was inexact about the numbers is because they did change on the nature of the venue, and it was 6 years ago I was there, so it's slightly hazy when I recall.
All right, but it gives us a bit of a sense of it. Good. The other
The
thing
main
is,
thing with Parkland Crowds was the lack of police involvement. We had a very, very good reputation there for no trouble.
okay, well, we have a police officer here, so we can perhaps get some comment on that later on too. The only other thing, well, two other things quickly that I want to touch on. One is the plan. The plan that we've got, I think, is inaccurate and actually quite difficult to see, actually. So I'm just sort of asking about that plan, really. I mean, what have you got an accurate plan that you are ready to submit, or I'm not quite sure why we've ended up with a tiny little plan.
Unless we've added an incorrect file for the plan, then the plan we have is accurate. It's the one is based on the one provided by Hackney Council, and has been used for quite some time. I think it was produced in 2013, I believe, or maybe 15. I'm happy to look at that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate, unless it's a distorted file or something. But I didn't think
well, certainly on the printed papers, which is what I'm working from, because it's easier to do that rather than from the screen whilst we're in a virtual meeting. It comes out at about the size of 2 postage stamps at the moment, so it's very difficult to. I guess if we need to, we might be able to get it up online on our screens and expand it a bit or something like that. If the file quality will manage that. My other question really is a very general question, which is that, I mean, as you've rightly pointed out, 5 o'clock in the morning is way outside the council's core hours, and I wonder what your feeling would be if we were to say, let's cut to the chase and discuss whether or not we might be able to discuss this license in terms of core hours. Is that something that would be attractive to you? Are you aware of the core hours and
I am aware of the core hours. It isn't. I mean, it would be, but it would having those particular events with those particular partners means that we can offer really safe events and not take ones that are. So, for example, I don't want to be selling alcohol here every day, every night. That's not what we're about. If it becomes something where to be able to subsidize all the costs that we have to cover, both in the building infrastructure as well as the services that we provide, which are not funded by anyone other than ourselves, but obviously provide a substantial amount of social value. If we have to not have like one later event, which again are not going to be even every week anyway, 2 a month is what we're really talking. And then we would have to be more consistent by selling alcohol in the evening and kind of turn it.
Neil, I think you've frozen at the moment. I don't know if you can hear us or not. You might be able to hear us. We'll wait until oh, you're back on again now.
I can hear. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, okay. I understand that. I mean, the business model here is that you need these long hours so that you can make the money to subsidize and to run the building, and to subsidize the other events that you put on there. I guess at that point, then my point of clarification is, I don't feel that I know enough about your partners and why they want to go to this time of the day. And I'm a bit alarmed that we're not seeing your partners here to put their case and tell us about what they do and what have you. You know, you're sort of saying, I'm not going to be running that part of the business. Our partners are going to do that, and we're not seeing your partners. They're not here. That's concerning me a bit at the moment.
Okay, so when I say partners, they're not my business partners. They are people who have been running really successful and safe events in London, New York for the past 15 years. Now, apologies of my terminology. So for example, the occupants that I have here, and we have a slightly different arrangement than just a basic landlord-tenant scenario. So the sauna CIC, for example, we have a turnover rent on that, and it allows them to start in the first place. So we work with lots of grassroots organizations, and it makes it much more of a partnership than a basic landlord-tenant dynamic. Their interest is our interest, I think. Now, as far as I'm concerned, yes, they're partners, but for example, one of them, which is Beauty and the Beat, they do one event per month, the last Saturday of the month. They don't do more than that. And that, so it is a long-term partner for me. It's because we don't want to have these one-off people who then start to, turn the volume up or, kind of leave the street. So people that we don't know respect the place because they don't have a long-term interest. Now, that is part of what they've been doing for the past 15 years. It's what they're known for. Their clientele is very much more like family, and we did already trim their hours from 6 down to 5, and they kind of have felt that drain on what it was. But we convinced them that it's okay to do that. I don't believe that they will stick around here very much if they could go less than that, because it's already kind of damaged anyway. And excuse me. And like I said, also, I mean, in terms of having core hours, I would rather have a couple of later events throughout the month at the 5 a.m. Than have them consistently throughout the week, because when you have that consistency throughout the week, that is when you start to attract balloon sellers and things like that, because it makes it worth their while to be there and have that consistency as part of their.
Okay. No, I understand that. Although, let's be honest, balloon sellers are perfectly able to use the internet and find out where events are going on until late as well. So
they can, but they haven't this past year while we've been running our TENS events here at all. So generally, what they do, because we've these guys around all the time, and they sit around pubs waiting for passing trade. They sit around kind of pubs knowing that they've got consistent, their scheduling is it's a business at the end of the day, is what they're doing.
Right.
So they need to have consistency.
I think if we're not,
and we're not giving them
we're moving into
Our security
here.
rules,
I think.
So
Can I just sorry. I don't really want to move into discussion at this moment. These questions at the moment are intended for clarity rather than for discussion, so that we know what we're dealing with. And to some extent, it seems to me that what you've said is that various aspects of your business are contracted out to other people to deliver. You said the sauna is a case in point. That you have other operators who deliver services in the building. Have I understood that business model correctly?
Not quite. So we have occupants. We have a library of things here, for example. That's an automated service, but we house it. Like, we are the ones who have staffing for any percent of alcohol. We are the ones who take care of the fire risk of the building. All management, all health and safety, all statutory requirements are all done by us. Now, where there is a service where we are not the experts, like taking care of people whilst using saunas, for example, then we are not the best place to do that. We also have a CNC factory, which is part of a funded Hackney Council project, the Vic Workspace Fund. Now, I'm not the technician for that. I don't do that. We have artists here. We have photographers here. I don't go and take the photos for them either. So each of those businesses operates in the same way, and we are licensed with them. And we also have overall policies across the site that they also have to conform to, like our equality, diversity, inclusion policies, safeguarding of children, safeguarding of vulnerable adults. They're voluntary policies that we keep anyway, and all of our occupants, no matter what their service or practice, have to abide by those rules. So the events that we have, yes, that the people, so Beauty and the Beat, come in and set up their own sound system, and they play their own music. But we have overall control. We run the bar. we're in control of security, we're in control of them. If we ask them to turn the music down, they turn the music down. So we don't contract out the thing and let someone have free reign, and we will never do that. And I've never done that in 15 years. That isn't what we do. We work with people under contracts and agreements. The things that they are better at and more suited to, we hand over to them, and we maintain our boundaries on that. And the things that and all of the things regarding either licensing, regarding it's the security firm, regarding licensing, regarding any statutory requirements, are all held by us, and we are the ones that are accountable and liable for those.
Okay.
Including insurance as well.
Including insurance. So you are carrying the insurance for the whole venue and all of the activities that are in there.
All of the activities that are in there, unless they are outside of it. So, for example, we don't insure the activities of any of the artists or photographers. We don't cover their own public liability within the space that they occupy, but within any public space, we do. So the saunas, for example, do operate in a public space, and we take liability on that, and we also take charge of making sure that if they're not maintaining it in a way, which they do always, occasionally there's a few blips, but if there are a blip, then we take care of it on their behalf. So we're the ones who are liable for any public space. Inside the saunas is a different matter, because it's their asset and they are responsible for it. But I require them to make sure that they give me kind of regular checks and risk assessments and all those things too. So if it's a business, that has a practice which is not within our control, they are responsible for their guests within that building. Expense.
Okay, thanks. Can you clarify for us the name of the company then that you're working with to put on these late night events? What are they called?
So there's Giant Steps, which also ran the venue Brilliant Corners.
Okay.
Or at least they were partners with Brilliant Corners, which have done lots of things in the area as well, in Swan Wharf and at Hackney Bridge. And then the other is Beauty and the Beat. Now, they're not a company as such. They are a group of friends that are a DJ collective.
Okay.
Those are the two partners. There's one. Sorry, go on.
No, I wasn't trying to say anything at that point. Okay, I've done enough clarification, I think, for the time being. Richard, have you got? Sorry, Councillor Lufkin, have you got other things you'd like to ask as well?
No, I think you've really covered it there. I'll come to it in the discussion phase. Thanks.
Actually, I've got one other clarification, which is about you're covering one of the things in this application, unless I've misread it completely, is that you're asking for boxing to be licensed until 5 o'clock in the morning. Is that right?
I mean, I don't think we'll ever do boxing. Our previous license application at Tower Space, we had where the consultant used the term everything from tiddlywinks to boxing. I'm happy for not to have boxing in there at all. That was just more a term that consultant at the time used, which went into our license in Tower Hamlets.
Okay. So boxing could be removed then, if we wanted to.
Sure. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I mean, there are some. I mean, it's not performance, but I mean, we do workshops or host people doing martial arts training and things like that, but they're not performative.
No. Okay. Good. No, I was a bit worried because I thought I've never heard of boxing matches going on at that time of the day, and I was just thinking, what on earth is happening? Okay. Good. Well, thank you for all of that. At this point, then, let's move on to hear from the police, if we may, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Our concerns are purely on the hours. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, lovely. Police concerns factor mainly around the hours. The venue has had a number of temporary event notices that have run till 5 o'clock. that have run without incident. We have not had an issue with how they've run so far. My concern is potentially having that license there for it to be every week and every weekend. I know Neil said that that's not how the events will run and everything else, but going forward, it's safeguarding. How do we safeguard that it doesn't change hands and it's then used potentially as a nightclub till 5 o'clock in the morning? That's our concerns. We don't have an issue with the things they've run at the moment. We certainly don't have an issue with the stuff they do during the day. It is well run as far as we're concerned. We haven't had complaints about their events so far. It is just that continued 5 o'clock license at weekends going forward and how we safeguard that potentially. But other than that, we'd say we had a good meeting. We've agreed some conditions, I think, that have been circulated as well, that were based around what was already in the operating schedule. We talked about ending licensable activity completely outside by 11 o'clock at the latest, but obviously that's down to you to have another discussion around later. But those were our main concerns.
Thank you. Can I just ask for clarification? Have you got a set of hours that you would be happy with? Oh, sorry, Suba's wanting to say something. Before you answer that, Suba.
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt. I just got a confirmation. The applicant has withdrawn his application for the second item. So I can see we have one other person who's waiting to be heard for the second item. So I just want to say that so we can ask the person.
That's kind of you. Thank you. So is that Louise?
That's me, and I'm very relieved.
Before you go anywhere, just before you go anywhere, let me because Matus is also here, who I was assuming was the applicant for the next one, but perhaps I'm wrong about that. Matus, who are you, and are you linked to the second item? Hello.
Chair, if I could interject, I have Matus down for the first item, which obviously we're
Oh,
covering.
right. Okay.
And I see that Mr. McDonald is nodding his head. So, yes. So obviously Louise is the only
Louise
person,
is the only person here for the second
present
item.
for the second item. So,
So in that case, thanks very much for raising that, Suba, because Louise, now you've got the evening off.
I'm very relieved about it. I'm actually in a different time zone and it's incredibly late here. So good night, all.
Okay.
Thank you, Louise.
Cheers. Bye-bye. In that case, do you mind if I just quickly ask who Matus is, because I don't know, and I was labouring under a misapprehension there that he wasn't relevant to this.
Matej is my business partner, so one of the directors of Civic State Limited. He has, well, I'm not sure what I was going to say, but I think he was going to give the other list of items, but maybe has something else to add. Sorry, Matej.
Okay, no, it's all right. As long as we know who he is, that's fine. And I'm sorry that I overlooked him earlier on. Right, so coming back to Amanda, my question to Amanda was, have you got in mind a set of hours that you would find that you could accommodate and live happily with?
It's tricky. No, to be honest. As I say, the odd events we've not had issue with, and we've not had a problem with them. It's just the same hours repeatedly every weekend, and it's difficult to then come up with a set of hours that reflect going later occasionally and not sometimes. So yeah, no, I haven't got a set of hours I'd be happy with. Sorry.
Presumably, if we were talking core hours, you wouldn't have a problem with that.
Not at all. Not at all.
No. No.
I think they just as a reminder to everybody, although I appreciate they want the later hours, but obviously core hours gives you something and would reduce the need for 10s over 2 nights and things like that as well. So that might be something to remember and look at if necessary, to not to be too disheartened, Neil, going forward. If that's what you came out with core hours, and just you would only need the from midnight then, for example, at a weekend, because core hours is midnight Friday, Saturday, isn't it? If I remember rightly. Yeah. So it's just to bear that in mind as well.
Yeah, nice, thank you.
But
And
yes,
I think it's a reasonable point as well. May I respond?
No, we'll come back to that, I think, in the discussion, if that's all right, because there are various other things I think we need to talk about at that point. Thank you, Amanda. Councillor Lufkin, have you got anything you'd like to put to Amanda?
Yeah, just for clarification, you're saying you object to non-standard hours for New Year's Eve as well, do you? Is that right?
yes, please. Just so we know exactly what we're dealing with. Obviously, the temporary event notices are there, and it gives us an idea if we've got an exactly. Just saying they can open till 6:30 means we don't really know what they're going to do. So
Okay.
we would ask it then gets in line, even if it's to midnight every New Year's or something like that, to stay in line with core hours. But for that extra hour, should it be a weekday or whatever, then we'd be happy with that. So they'd only need a temporary event notice from midnight onwards. That would be fine.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And Amanda, can I just ask for a clarification? Sorry, just so that I'm clear about this. When you say about the TENS, are you saying that basically the problem that they've had before is that when they've had a TENS license, they've had to use 2 licenses in order to cover one event because it was over 2 different days? And if they've got licensing up until midnight, then they would only need to use 1 TENS license, which so they've run out of TENS at the moment, but they wouldn't necessarily run out of TENS in the future in those circumstances. Is that right?
They would certainly stretch further. I think the TENS they had were listed on a page further up. So when they've had to start an event, say from like 10 p.m. at night and go till 5 a.m., that counts as their 2 days on their TENS allowance. But so whereas it'd only be 1 if it went from midnight, for example, or later.
Okay, thank you very much. Lovely. Okay, in that case, then I think the next person that we should hear from is Channing, please, from the licensing department.
Thank you, Chair. You can see my representation at Appendix B2. So our primary concerns here are the core hours. The hours sort are in excess of the core hours by some way. We've noted what's been discussed so far. Again, with the external area in our policy, our external area use policy, LP6, is up to 10 p.m. at night. So that's something, if the committee was minded to grant the license, that's something we would like to see it within 10 p.m. I know 11 p.m. has been discussed. Also, you've discussed the off sales, which was another point of concern for us, if the applicant's prepared to remove off sales. I know in the applicant's submission, they did mention the capacity was up to 700 and they've said they'll take it down to 500 or 350. But from our point of view, we haven't seen any further supporting documentation that actually justifies the capacity. So whether it's a planning document or it's a fire risk assessment, you know, how did this capacity get attached to this premises? Where was it formalized? That's something we'd like to see and be made aware of. And, you know, our primary concern again is 5 a.m. in a residential area with up to 500 people, as the application is now. It raises significant concerns for us about the potential risk to prevention of public nuisance licensing objective. I understand what the applicant has said about wanting to finance these activities, but us as a licensing authority, we can only consider the licensing objectives. And additionally, Chair, I did make reference to a report from the noise team, commercial noise team, who do actually inform us of complaints. So from June this year up to the 1st of October, we're aware of 6 complaints made in relation to the premises. And I know during that period there were 5 TENS, so I'm not sure if they're directly related to the TENS or not, but we are aware of commercial noise complaints from residents in relation to the premises in the months gone prior. And finally, Chair, just around relating to the sauna, there's some question mark there because we're not aware of any licensed premises. Mashal special treatment licenses are required to actually operate a sauna within London Borough of Hackney, and we're not aware of any a license for that premises. So potentially they have an unauthorized sauna at the premises, and then again that raises questions for us about the overall management and effort for compliance, and how does that reflect on the operators, and should it affect the committee's willingness to grant them a license to potentially 5 a.m. Nothing further to add at this stage, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all very clear. Richard has got some clarification questions.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Channing. I'm just reading your report now, and it says the applicant has not provided any acoustic report and/or dispersal policy documentation that would demonstrate how the operator would minimise the impact of the dispersal of up to 500 persons at 5 a.m. in a residential area. Have you not received anything about that?
We still haven't received anything. Of
No
that
acoustic
nature.
report or anything like that?
I haven't seen it, Chair.
Okay.
I know they mentioned that they've done it, and I believe one wall of the premises might have been acoustically insulated, as far as I'm aware. But as far as the documentation, again, we haven't seen it or anything relating to it.
So we have to assume we haven't got it. Is that right?
I don't have it, Chair. No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Finally then, it's Howard next. Howard, perhaps you could make your representations, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. I'm representing Strategic Property Services for the council, but obviously not part of the statutory role here as the landowner. We've made a number of points, some of which have been covered already this evening, so I'll quickly go across them as they touch various points. First of all, Stour Space Limited and Civic State Limited are unauthorised occupants at this present moment in time. They are in discussions with the council, but agreement has not been reached yet with them. Without prejudice, discussions are still going on and continue to go on, but as yet compliance has not, or completion has not been made. We believe that the events proposed, over 200 attendees, exceeds the capacity of the premises. We have not seen evidence from the health and safety submissions so far that this supports this. We welcome that documentation. There was a comment about planning. Our understanding was it was not in accordance with planning. I've taken a note of Neil's comments and will make inquiries of the planning team tomorrow to follow up that point. The premises was originally designed, or originally concept was a community facility, which also covered arts facilities and workshops. We do not support a late license. We do see it as potentially acceptable as an adjunct to their existing community service and services they offer, but anything later than 11 o'clock does seem inappropriate for the proposed use for a council building as us as managers. Again, the off license was a concern to us. It turns it into a retail premises and not what we thought, which was a service which was ancillary to the community activities going on inside the building or as part of the letting process, which we would expect theatres, that sort of thing, or performance space to be used. And then our last point really was that as ourselves as a body which represents the public or part of the public general management, we have to think about how our space is used and how we interact and engage with the public. And we feel that a late license till 5 o'clock is inappropriate. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Lufkin, any clarification questions there at all?
No, none for clarification.
No. Okay. Right, we're going to move to the discussion phase, if we may. I'm going to sort of set some terms, I think, for this discussion, just so that you can be clear about where we're coming from on this. We are very aware that this is a residential neighbourhood. We're very aware as well that on the other side of Hackney Wick, from where the residents live, there's a lot of late night activity. I'm sure you can understand that we are very concerned that if there were to be late night activity in the baths on a regular basis, we could end up creating a sort of pedestrian motorway of fairly drunken people progressing across Hackney Wick through an area of sheltered accommodation, actually. And as we know, a residential area. That's a real concern for us, I think. I think you also need to be aware that as a licensing committee, our remit is not to, laudable and very worthy as your business may be, and no doubt you're presenting and doing lots of good work for the community during the daytime. Nevertheless, it is not our job to ensure that your business model is functional by giving you licenses which are way outside core hours. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that, sympathetic though we may be to the business that you're running, the viability of your business is not something that we would be taking into consideration when we decide whether or not to grant a license. So within those two, if you like, parameters, we can now move on to have a fuller discussion. Yes, I was going to come to you, Councillor Lufkind, actually to kick it off, really, and because I'm aware I've done too much talking.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, I just really want to build on what Councillor Rowter said, you know, so articulately. We're licensing, you're asking us to license a fairly substantial venue until 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, that's really way outside of core hours. We need to be 100% sure that if we do that, we're not going to disturb all of the residents in the neighbourhood and create a massive nightclub in this area, which, as Councillor Rowter has rightly pointed out, has sheltered housing and all sorts of vulnerable people. I mean, I'm just nervous about the lack of acoustic reports and things like that. You've got to come to us with some really great reasons why it's not going to disturb, why you need this license, not from a business point of view, but how your license is not going to impact on the residents nearby. I'm inclined, if I'm honest, to think about why you can't, you know, you're saying that you're not going to be doing it all the time. I mean, if we license to core hours, I'm wondering why, if you can then rely on temporary event notices, which I think, as Officer Griggs said, you know, if we license to core hours, you would then need fewer 10s to operate for the weekend because they'd be over 2 days. Because I'm really concerned that it's way outside of the core hours. You know, we've had a number of complaints, 6 noise complaints from June to October. We haven't got an acoustic report. We haven't got, you know, you're not giving us we need exceptional grounds to grant this license. And I don't feel we've got exceptional grounds to protect the residents. And I don't feel that we've got that. So I'd just like you to comment on that.
If I may, sort of picking up from that then, could I see whether or not there is the prospect of having a discussion about licensing to core hours, which is slightly longer than you've got anyway, and trying to nail down some of the outstanding bits and pieces that we've got that are still a bit raggedy around the edges on the basis of granting core hours. Is that something that you'd be prepared to discuss, Neil?
I'm prepared to discuss it. I mean, some parts of core hours I'm happy with. The 5 AM is I really do need, and it certainly, I mean, in my opinion, furthers licensing objectives because it limits the amount of continuous drinking activity across that would have to do across the whole venue otherwise. I mean, it also, you know, for example, the outside, I'm happy with core hours there. I'm happy with core hours inside, most like the week, like Sunday to Thursday. I'm happy to reduce hours on the Friday as well. and I mean, there are quite a lot of things that have been stated as fact which aren't necessarily true in those things, and I don't know if I should say now or there's a
No,
point at
do
which.
go ahead. If there are things, factual things which you think are wrong, then please go ahead.
So, Richard, you said that there was no dispersal policy or acoustic mitigation policy, which there isn't an acoustic there isn't an acoustic report. You are correct on that. However, within the event and security plan supplied with the application, there is a dispersal policy and an acoustic mitigation plan as well, which includes the baffles on the ceiling here, additional insulation on the double glazed windows, sound insulated curtains, also other features such as the type of sound system used. That is in there on the
Okay, can I come in there?
plan.
Okay, have you
Sure.
talked that through with licensing? You need to convince the licensing department that you've got a really great sound insulation system if you're going to 5 AM. Have you done that?
So we've spoken with licensing a number of times. Now, also, for example, those 6 complaints.
Sorry, yeah,
I have
so you
spoken-
have. Sorry, you've spoken to them, but have you spoken? I mean, okay, I'll ask the licensing department. Have you had contact with this applicant to satisfy your concerns about the noise?
Chair, I haven't had any contact with this applicant to discuss my representation on this application. I'm not sure if they've spoken to someone else in the licensing department, but with regards to my particular representation, I haven't had any discussion with the applicant about that. Chair.
Can you
Sorry,
see what
I
my
was
problem is,
speaking with,
Neil? Can you see? I mean, I need to be
I
really
can
convinced that that going to 5
Sure.
AM is not going to disturb all the residents. There's no acoustic report, and you haven't discussed it with them. That's a massive problem.
Could I? I'm afraid
Richard,
I'm going
thank
to
you
go.
for-
I'm going to go a bit further than that, and say that, to be perfectly frank, even to extend to core hours, we need that kind of conversation, because particularly since, as you know, there's elderly people live nearby, and we have had 6 noise complaints. If we're going to go to midnight on weekends, we need that kind of documentation and information.
Okay, may I quickly comment on those noise complaints, because again, I don't want to be used as fact when those are also not accurate either. There was one. I haven't forget. I have spoken to Ola, is it, in licensing, about a number of those complaints when they've been sent to me, and none of them are really very consistent. For example, there was one earlier in the year, which was a noise complaint on a Sunday, which we did not have attendance for because we had no licensable activities taking place. The event was 4 till 8 PM. It was a spoken word poetry event. I believe Martin was there. It was pretty beautiful. It involves a very diverse bunch of people, and those people after 8 o'clock, having had intoxicant free, went outside onto the public benches and carried on with their spoken word poetry. I believe the complaint said that there were people rapping outside and smoking. Sorry, not smoking. Taking drugs was the thing. Is like, well, firstly, that rapping outside shows a very clear kind of misunderstanding of what is going on for a spoken word poetry event with free food and chai for everyone. Some people in the area might kind of see something happening here and be kind of scared. And there have been events that happened in this building in the past that gives them good reason to be. There were a lot of things. This was a problem building. As Amanda has said as well, they haven't received complaints for the late night events there, which we've used all of our terms.
Just to be clear, are you saying that none of the 6 complaints are about late night noise? Is that what you're saying?
As far as I'm aware, yes. And I think there was one that was about late night noise. However, this wasn't our venue. We had nothing on those nights. Our email, we documented email at the time.
I have seen reference to one complaint that was for something which was happening between 11 and 12, I think, at night. So, arguably that's late night.
Was that the 1st of October? There's a complaint on the 1st
I'd
of
have to
October.
look back through the papers to.
I believe that was the same person who had complained before. They said that we were doing like events every Saturday, which is just not true. And they used the name of events are run by a particular website, which again is entirely untrue as well. I mean, there were lots of other
Okay.
things in there as well. You know, it's
Yeah.
not a founded complaint.
All right.
I think CCTV footage proves it as well, because I had these conversations with Ola.
May I just add in
I'm-
about the, sorry.
Can I just ask Amanda what she'd like to say, because she's had her hand up for longest.
Hello, Chair. I just want to ask for clarification, if you want to check with the applicant, what have they actually done to communicate with local residents, etc., to make them aware about the noise or potential noise that they may experience or not, in case it does affect them in some way? Or what have they done to address these complaints prior to this hearing?
That is a fair point, and I would say that.
Sorry.
Can I just, again, I just want, rather than go over old ground, we've seen in the report that you've had conversations with Gordon Fryer, who runs the Trowbridge Pensioners. And so clearly you've had some communication with him. What else have you done?
So we have a lot of our local residents in here, like in the daytime anyway. So whenever anyone is in, we can constantly engage with them. I haven't necessarily gone door knocking, because also not all the doors around here are easy to knock on, and it's also slightly, in our opinion, a slightly intimidating thing to do. Obviously, we've had the notices there, but we are in constant engagement with our communities as well.
Okay, so can I just ask,
personal numbers.
Can I cut to the chase for a moment and say, if, regardless really of whatever the hours are that we end up deciding, or whatever, if we do decide to grant hours, would you be prepared to have a condition which involved a regular meeting with residents, so that you could hear the views of residents and what?
Absolutely.
And so that you'd be happy with that condition?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
brilliant. That's a great
Good.
idea.
Okay, good.
May I just with the dispersal policy? There is going to be no people allowed outside the front of the building at any time smoking. We've got an area at the back where they can smoke without disturbing anybody. There's no reason for anybody to be outside the front of the building. That will be legislated for at all times. I would like to speak to Amanda from the police about, when you say there's 500 people leaving here at 5 o'clock, there will probably be about 20 people left at 5 o'clock. It's not like everybody all leaves at once with these events. They tend to disperse. It's an older crowd, so they're not all staying to the end. So that would go down. We would possibly look at maybe having a dispersal point under the flyover, where there are no residents at all.
I think that
be arranged with somebody that can do that.
I think really the dispersal policy that's outlined in the plan has been working very successfully over this last year of TENS, which is why we've used all these TENS first before applying for licenses, to make sure we're doing it right and ironing out any of those things. So I am aware also, we haven't got an acoustic survey, but that is also based on our constant. We've constantly checked around the areas with the decibel readers. Like I say, Gordon has got my personal number, as has other people in the square behind as well. So all of the residencies from close proximity have my personal number and the number of the on-site managers too. I was once called by, I think it was one of the complainees, to say that there was those poets outside, those spoken word poets outside, and that's the only complaint I've got. I'm very happy to have you guys communicate with those residents as well.
I am a local resident, and I do live in sheltered accommodation, and as such, I feel I would be able to be a very good conduit to people there to get any positive or negative feedback. And I also have very close relationship with St. Vicar at the church. Sorry, sorry.
Can I just, I also have to remind you then at this stage that whilst, we may be very sympathetic to what you're trying to do in many ways, when we grant this license, the license is granted for the building. And if you were, and I hope you don't, but if you were to go bankrupt next week, that license would be extant for whoever comes into the building afterwards. And so you may run it beautifully at the moment, but if we're to grant the kind of license that you're looking for, we have to bear in mind that it might not be you that's actually operating the license, and that's a significant concern for us. Channing's got his hand up as well. Channing, what would you like to say?
Chair, I just wanted to point it out that at the end of my representation, where I make reference to the complaints, so those complaints are sent to our commercial noise team, who then a report is compiled, and licensed premises who have those complaints are forwarded on to us. So those complaints, even though the police may not be aware, there are residents during that period who have called the out of hours commercial noise complaints number in reference to this particular premises. I just want to make that clear regarding the complaints. I understand the applicant has some dispute regarding one of them that's been noted, but just for clarification, they are made directly to the council.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Lufkin?
So, Channing, as far as you're concerned, the complaints still stand?
Chair, as far as we're aware, yeah, the complaints.
Okay. The question that I've got is how much
May I question
so
that?
can I let me finish, please?
Otherwise, I did provide evidence otherwise, and there were
So let me
multiple
finish,
that
please.
I mean, I was clarifying that
Sorry,
point. Like you did.
Neil, can we just go through the chair, please? Richard speaking.
Okay, Channing, how much? You said that you haven't had any contact with the applicants. Is that right?
No, Chair, not until today.
Fine. So this is the first time. So the first time that I mean, that causes me great concern, to be perfectly honest. You know, you're going for a really, really late license. You know, I would have expected you to have a really good dialogue with our licensing team about how this is going to work. So that why is it only now that you're getting in contact? This is a question to Neil. Why is it only now that you're getting in contact with the licensing team? Or, you know, why haven't you been in constant dialogue with them?
Okay, there are lots of reasons here. Many of them are personal as well. We can go into all of them if you like, although you have to ask for confidentiality. But I've also been under extreme scrutiny from Strategic Property Services to get this lease in place as well, doing multiple documents, last minute changes as well. Also, a number of my other business partners for example, Kane Crawford is now a missing person through stress, which I've been dealing with this last week as well. So yeah, I haven't been in direct contact with them, but I am also running a venue. I'm getting all my staff kind of fire trained. I'm getting all these things done to make sure that that this venue is safe, it complies with all statutory requirements, which it does anyway. But making sure that everything's in line over and above for the council. Howard made representations which, again, are not necessarily fact. That is the Strategic Property Services kind of perspective on things. And I'm basically towing the line as much as possible, yet being kept extremely busy in that. Now, I did meet with Amanda from police on site. Thank you for that, Amanda. That was really good, as well as Councillor Chris Kennedy and many other people too. Bearing in mind as well, like the operations on this site are extensive. The amount of projects that we have, which often fall to me, is extensive. So yeah, I work right now between 15 and 20 hours a day to keep this building going because of the hardships that Strategic Property Services put on of us. I can go on and on about kind of why.
No, thank you.
I have also spoken to Ola from licensing because he was the one who gave the report, and he's the one who has been conferring with me on some of the noise complaints, which I have evidence otherwise, which was satisfied with. I gave CCTV footage of the specific timings, and you know.
Okay, Neil.
I'm
going to cut to the chase here, because it seems to me that if we're going to kind of actually make some progress, we need to sort of start chopping away at certain things and sort of see what we might be able to achieve. one of the things I think that is quite clear to us is that had you been able to have the more extensive conversations with licensing before this meeting, some of the raggedy bits that we're talking about in this license wouldn't be there, because at the moment it's one of those licenses where you've kind of just gone for everything because you can, and we'll sort it out in the meeting. What tends to happen is that it's better and more productive, generally speaking, to try and have those conversations in advance with the licensing department, so that you don't actually put in the boxing stuff, because you're not going to do any boxing, and you sort of have a think about what is going to be workable time outside for you to have, and you have some thoughts about how many smokers are going to be outside at any one time, and all of these things are things that can be worked through in advance, so that we don't have to work through them here at the committee. I think that as it stands at the moment, there is no way that you're going to be getting a 5 a.m. license. So at this point, we can have a conversation about, do we go through some of these raggedy bits that are in the license to look at how we can make the license work with core hours? Is that something that you'd like to do at this point? Because we can spend the time in committee trying to do that now. Or do you feel that you want to go away and really make a very tight case for the 5 a.m., having now, I think, probably got a full appraisal of how difficult it's going to be to get that? I'll leave that question to you, really. Sorry,
Sure.
the councillor.
Yeah, I just completely concur with the chair. That's absolutely my position too.
Neil, sorry, I'm not sure you haven't frozen, because I've just
Chair, the legal officer has raised her hand.
Oh, sorry, Amanda.
Yes, Chair, I think you need to be quite clear with the applicant that it is actually very rare for the council to grant a 5 a.m. licence, and so the actual likelihood is actually very remote.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to encourage you particularly to go away and do that. Yeah, as I say, it is a very unlikely thing. And I think if you bear in mind the comments that I made about where you're located, vis-a-vis the other late night activities that take place in Hackney Wick, you can see why we would struggle with that.
I mean, I have a whole list of the comments, and I'd really like to go through them. I mean, the one. Okay, there's a number of the. I find the specific one about the pathway corridor is a very good terminology. I quite liked it, the one that you used. I'm very much aware of the need. Well, certainly what happens around the train station. To be honest, it's not an area that I'd like to walk through either late at night myself, or in the morning in the aftermath of what happened there around Queen's Yard. Glass and gas canisters and plastic cups all over the place. That's not something I enjoy. It's not something I enjoy walking to. I have a 7-year-old, and I'm a single parent myself. I don't like that he has to walk through that. I don't like walking through it myself. Part of what we do at the space, at the events, which I do believe have been run very successfully, is we.
Sorry, Neil, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I think we're struggling to hear you in. Neil, I wonder if I could ask you a favour. Would you mind switching your camera off, just because I think we might get better audio if you do that. Sorry, it's not that we don't want to look at you. It's just the limits of the technology.
That's okay. You have a lovely picture there from a few years ago, so I look a little younger. Thank you. Is that better? Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can. Yeah, much better. Thanks.
Great. I'm just going to start from the top of the list. I do apologize. So in video and on phone, I have a stutter, so I hope you can bear with me through that.
That's
It's not so noticeable face to face, but over this it is, and I just it'd be good if I just want to make you aware of that. So as we go through, it's give you the time to
Thank you.
get my words out. Thank you.
Appreciated. Thank you.
So the so I'm going through this thing. So in terms of the safeguarding, the point that Amanda made, in terms of the longevity of the license on the building, absolutely. I mean, this is a really valid point. And in fact, it's something that, you know, having run licenses in this area, like I say, longer than anyone else in this area. Certainly in the Hackney Fish Island area, is the one I'm talking about. Sorry. And being, you know, someone of you know, standing in the area as a somewhat public figure, it is absolutely within my concern as well. I wonder if there's something that can be written into the license that will state that if this company was no longer to exist here, that the license would also be suspended, or if, as I'm currently going through lease negotiations with Strategic Property Services for a new lease here to replace, in my opinion, the existing one, then I'd be happy for it to be put into the lease that it's an obligation on me to remove that if I was to not be in this property anymore. So there's a double safeguarding there, because I think it is an important one.
Can Councillor Lufkin's just put his hand up? Perhaps we can just hear what he wants to interject with.
Yeah, Neil, these are important points, but they're things that need to have been sorted out before the meeting. We can't do it now at sort of 8:30 at night to completely rewrite our licensing policy. So I kind of go back to what the chair said. Do you want us to now carry on the basis of, look, you know, I think it's extremely unlikely, and the chair may agree with me, that you're going to get a 5 AM license. Okay, so do you want us to carry on the basis of normal licensing hours? Is that, because that's what I think we're probably, is that what you want us to do?
I think that's a reasonable interjection, in as much as that's the kind of terms on which we can have the discussion this evening. Amanda, you wanted to say something as well?
Yes, sorry, Chair. I am conscious of time, and I am conscious that the applicant probably needs time to digest some things as well and think about how he wants to proceed, because I think he's struggling at the moment. I don't know, this is not something we would normally do, and I don't know whether the licensing officer would object to this, but I don't know if it's worth considering an adjournment to give him that time, because it's not, you know, we don't want to, you know, have a drawn out thing. That I think we might need more time to maybe consult more people. I don't know if that's a good idea.
Thank you.
For parties.
Can I ask Suba, as the licensing officer, if an adjournment is something that we could do?
Yes, Chair, it's up to the members for the decision to be made, but it is feasible. Yeah, it can be done.
Okay, so legally it is something we could do. You can see, Neil, that it's unusual because we're having to ask if we can do it. Neil, what are your thoughts?
So I have a situation at the moment where the council, so the Strategic Property Services, have required me to raise £18,000 in a couple of days. Now, I'd like to do a couple of fundraisers this weekend, which would fall within core hours, and so I would like to, at the very least, be able to, if we can, achieve core hours this evening, and then I'd like to, at a later date, a very soon later date, try and apply for variation and provide all the other things to support and give confidence that at 5 AM on a Saturday would be okay. The core hours, you know, I note that the core hour and ability to do tens is of course there. However, we need to probably do on average 2 events per month to make this later events per month to make this a going concern. At the very least, 1. And really 2, and obviously tens doesn't allow for that, even just with that 1 day period. But I am happy to move forward on the basis of core hours for this particular meeting, because my ability to be able
Okay.
to continue in this
All right.
building kind of relies on it. That's all.
Let's in that case let's reframe the whole conversation then in terms of the core hours, because there are still a number of concerns that we've got that we need to get to the bottom of, I think, even if we go ahead with core hours. So just to the ones that are on the top of my list are obviously the acoustic report. I think is certainly something that we need to bottom out, how we're going to handle that. I think we would want to include a condition about regular meetings with residents. That's
Absolutely.
definitely something that we would want. I think we would like to take up the condition about nobody smoking outside at the front of the building, but we do need to talk about the numbers who would be smoking at the back of the building after the agreed time limit on outside activities, which is something else that we need to discuss as well. We would need to agree that boxing is off the agenda and we're taking that out altogether. We would need to agree that the off license is also off the agenda, and I think we would also need to discuss the capacity of the venue as well, and how you can provide us with the evidence that you can cope with 350 people. And indeed, I would suggest that if 350 people is the maximum that you're aiming to deal with, that you change the terms of the license to license it for 350 rather than 500.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very happy to discuss all of those things and make amendments. Which one should I discuss first? Sorry,
Okay. Now, there's another question that I
Right.
just need to put quickly, because you're saying that you, and I just don't know the answer to this, so this is a question for the licensing officer and the legal team, which is that should we manage to hammer out these things and get them so that we can agree tonight, would they be in place quickly enough for Neil to be able to have his events this weekend inside core hours? Amanda and Suba, could you advise us on that, please?
The decision could be issued tomorrow, if you're saying it's that urgent. Otherwise, I'm not sure about issuing the license itself, but I think once the decision is issued, I think that allows them to operate under what members have decided. Is that correct, Suba?
Yes, Chair. So if whatever the decision has been made tonight, based on that, the license will be issued. If any change for the amendment needs to be done, they need to apply for a variation.
Okay. So that's quite good news then, Neil, I think, isn't it? It means that we can thrash through this and hopefully somewhere. Anything that I've missed from that list of points?
Okay, I was just going to say about the plan. I don't know if you need to add a revised plan or whether or not you're happy with the plan.
No, I'm not happy with the plan. I can't see it.
So we need
there
a
needs to be a
revised plan.
revised
Okay.
I'm happy to send the plan through almost straight away.
Okay, good. So the plan you think is an accurate plan. It's just a problem of the sizing and possibly the quality of the resolution of the document that was sent through, something like that. So let's take it then one thing at a time. First of all, if we're to grant you activities within the core hours, within Hackney Council's standard core hours, first of all, first condition is we need a decent plan sent through. We need to talk about the capacity of the building. The landlord of the building has told us that as far as they're aware, the capacity is about 200. What documentation do you have to say that the capacity is more than 200?
So I have a fire risk assessment, which the one I have currently, I'll find the other one. Basically, the one I have currently, the hall by itself has a capacity of 451 people because it's 225.5 square meters. The hall is the hall itself is, I believe, 1/5 of the ground floor, including the garden outside. So that actually gives a much greater capacity than the 700. Now, based on the fire escapes that we have for that hall, 2 quite large double doors and a single door in the internal space, we have a hall holding capacity of 326 people. But of course, that never happens in the event. So when you add up the spaces for the hall, the garden, the lounge, the east wing, the smoking area, and the toilets, things like that, the hall never reaches that capacity anyway. Also, the events that we have, we set 350 capacity because that is every single person in the building, not just in the hall, but it has to include all of our studio holders, it has to include our security, our staff, bar staff, anyone who might be using the saunas at the time, and any guests. So we allow a 50-person extra capacity. So our events the events themselves only go to 300 people, and there's a 50-person excess that we say just in case every single person who could be in the building is in, which has never happened. So
Okay.
we are well into that capacity, 350.
So 2 questions. Can we amend this license so that you're looking to license it for 350 people? And can we ask you to send through the fire safety certificates and what have you, which shows that you have that the capacity is that the venue is able to take that capacity? Can you send that through with the plans, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. Can I just come back to Howard quickly and ask if that would satisfy?
We have asked before for this information.
Right. Well, the imperative is now on Neil to send it through tomorrow, because this license is not going to be issued unless we've got that document. So, you know.
I welcome seeing it tomorrow morning, Mr. Chairman. Chairman. I welcome. Apologies, sorry.
That's all right.
And Howard, apologies on not getting that through yet. So obviously we're using a consultant to send it through, and she wanted to wait for our. So we have a whole new team of staff, and so I was waiting to get them all fire trained, which happened this morning, which obviously goes into that fire assessment as well. So apologies that you haven't got that yet. I've also been waiting on Christine to send that through to me.
Can I also add, please, Chairman, that whilst it comes in tomorrow, I will need to consult with colleagues. That is setting for us a deadline, a very tight deadline for me to consult with colleagues, both legal, one of which is on holiday or will be on holiday, and a colleague who's returning from holiday tomorrow morning. So whilst I will do my best, I'm out the office for some time tomorrow. We have a very small time frame that's been set by Neil to try and achieve what he wants. Again, a point that we've previously made.
Okay. I mean, for the purposes of the licensing committee, I don't think we have to have your department rubber stamp it. I think for the purposes of the licensing committee, we just need to see that document to be convinced that it exists, basically. So that relieves you of the immediate pressure, I think. Can we just can we agree that boxing is now removed from this license application, and also that the off-license conditions are removed as well, please? Can we agree that?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
yeah. I stand against all kind of violence, including in the ring.
Good. Okay, so those 2 things are agreed. Now, the next thing I think, which is a bit problematic, is the outside area. I would like us to stick with our sort of core hours principles in terms of the outside area, which, if I'm, Channing, what did you want to say?
Chair, just in relation to external areas, if I can draw your attention to LP6, Our current recommendation is up to 10 p.m. in our policy for the use of external areas.
Yeah. So, and is that only weekends? That's Friday and Saturday and earlier in the week, isn't it?
Chair, I believe it's all days. For external areas, I believe it's all days.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Oh, no,
I thought,
I'd say all day is the relevant as well.
so, right. So we're at 10 o'clock then. I think if we can say 10 o'clock for any outside activities, that is the time at which outside activities have to cease. Are you willing to go with that?
Is that so? Maybe there's just for the avoidance of any doubt or for clarity, any licensable activities outside, is that as so the saunas, for example, which I'll come on to licensing for that in a second as well, run until 11 o'clock or thereabouts.
And the saunas happen outside?
Yes. They are on mobile, so they're all mobile, which also means that they do not come under the requirement to have to be licensed. So the sauna CIC has already looked into this and spoken with licensing authority about it.
Okay, so this is your reason why the saunas aren't licensed, is that right?
Yeah.
I have to say, personally, I'm inclined to say because the 10 p.m. limit is there because of noise. And I'm not suggesting that people are being rowdy in the saunas, but the fact is that the 10 p.m. limit there is because of noise, and also, as I said earlier, ease of enforcement, really. So I think we would probably be minded to say all activities.
I mean, we have a license in Tower Hamlets, which was for an outside area, and what we had there was that music must stop outside, but people actually are allowed to go till 12. Now, I don't want people outside till 12. Anyway, one of the things with the saunas being there is so they are at the furthest extent from any residence, and it literally is the calmest thing in the world. It's community sauna baths. The CIC.
Yeah.
So
okay. No, I'm sure that it is. I'm just looking at this from the point of view of, we have limited resources. We have to try and make this work.
Yes.
And I don't particularly want residents calling up and troubling the environmental services department to say there are people outside at 10:30 when they shouldn't be because they're having a sauna, and actually that's not covered by the license. We're trying to get this to a position for you so that it's a workable license which enables you to carry on. And there's an element of clarity involved, I think, which is important. Richard, what did you want to say?
Sorry, Chair, to interject. I note that our legal officer has disappeared from the screen. I don't want to stop the meeting too long. Amanda, you've
Sorry, I
returned.
do apologise. I had to make an urgent call. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Thank you for clarifying. Sorry, Chair. Sorry.
That's
Neil.
all right. And then let's just hear from Richard while we're just.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with the chair. We can't be. It's got to be easy to enforce. So how will people know whether they're having a sauna, whether they're having a drink? What are they doing? I mean, that's why we want it to, to finish at 10 o'clock, which is what I would be expecting. We've gone through a massive process, and we're trying to help you, but we can't. We're not going to go through. Who's doing exactly what outside? It's just got to end at 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Neil, can I just make one other observation, really, which is something that you've referred to, the fact that you've worked in Tower Hamlets and had, various different, you've had permission to do things to later times in Tower Hamlets, etc., etc. I mean, and we've also discussed some of what goes on in the yard in Hackney Wick, which, as you no doubt know, is in Tower Hamlets rather than in Hackney. I think that one of the issues that we've got is that the nature of this area is changing. So there were a lot of activities which happened in this area for quite a long time because it was not a dense residential area. Tower Hamlets, as well as Hackney, I'm sure, will be in the process of reviewing quite a lot of those activities. So just because things are going on until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, even 5 o'clock around the yard, it doesn't mean to say that that is going to be the norm for an extended period. It may well not be. You know, the fact is, with the dense population in the area, the noise complaints are just going to grow. So, you know, and local authorities have to respond to that. So I'm just saying that as a kind of an overall context point for you, really.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. In fact, when Hackney it tightened up its licensing policies a number of years ago, there was a bit of an uproar from lots of places. Now, I mean, I agreed and supported it, and you know, I think it's absolutely necessary to be stringent on licenses. You know, you're gonna be putting people in a position of intoxication for themselves and for everyone else around them. You need to make sure they're going to get home safe as well as quietly, and certainly also I definitely agree with all those things, and I suppose for some level of reassurance on that as well, like all of the licenses I've had they've been immediately next door to residences, like big lots of flats and things like that, so the license has been applied for before development and things like that. Without kind of necessarily, I think Stour Space in over 13 years had maybe 2 complaints, and they were normally about the buildings next door, which were warehouses that were unlicensed. So yeah, it's definitely in my interest and care to make sure that everyone is happy and satisfied. And in terms of the nature of the area, this thing is very much about kind of creating positive social wealth, not the negative things that comes with getting people wasted and loud music and stuff too.
Okay, can we just move on then quickly to think about smokers? I don't think it's in here at the moment, but I would like it to be in the license that smokers are going to not be at the front of the building, but at the back area designated for smoking. And I would like to have a limit on the number of smokers who are out there after 10 o'clock for noise reasons. Now, I'm not quite sure what you would consider to be a manageable number.
Yeah, I can give you examples, and I'm happy to settle on a number as well. It often entirely depends on the event, the type of people who are there. Obviously, we need to come to a set number across the board. So in the past, we've had, for example, the Beauty and the Beat events. We've had like probably 30 or 40 people at one time, and it's really calm, really quiet. We measure the noise, and if there is anything there that we have a security person posted outside at all times to maintain that. Whereas we've had an event in the past where, I mean, I think this was even not even late night, where people there was probably like 20 people out there, and they were pretty loud. And that was not one of the longer term partners. That was like a one-off event. But again, we have security out there to manage it. So I would suggest probably like a very maximum of 30 people. But we can also control that with the security, but also the space, because we always cordon off the space when no one can go wandering closer.
Okay. I mean, I was thinking more in the region of 10 or 12, I must say. Richard, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I'd just like to hear what Channing thinks.
Yeah.
Venue 350, Channing, what's appropriate for a number of smokers outside?
Chair, it's typically, this figure comes from our environmental protection noise pollution team, and historically they would go for between 10 and 5%. The issue that I think we have here is that because the way the plans are, there's no way of us really kind of having a view of that space, if that makes sense. So how big is the smoking area in relation to the rest of the premises? Is it going to be a situation where if there's 30 people in this area, are they going to have enough space really to not create a din in between themselves, if that makes sense? What I would say is it should be based on the capacity, and somewhere between 10 and 5%. So if that's 15 or 20, if we're on the 200 capacity, or maybe 20, 25 if we're on the 350 capacity. But again, it depends on the space and the size of it in the rear area.
Could you accept a maximum of 20, Neil?
I think that's fine. I mean, it would be good to have more, just so there's less kind of queuing, because obviously if people are queuing to get out, that's also congregating and chatting rather than puffing away. And so it kind of means that there's more people in that area. But I mean, if that's acceptable to, I mean, that my opinion would be that there would be less noise if it was a slightly greater number. But I'm also very happy for it to be 20, and we can manage that as well. And whatever way we manage that, we'd make sure that whether there's people queuing up or not. And if I was to try to do a variation at any point in the future, then I can give
you can
example.
come back with some hard experience.
Amanda Griggs would like to say something, but also before she says something, I was just working out what 5% of the 350 is, and that's 17.5. So let's call it 18 people. So that's actually less than 20. So 20 is already quite generous, but I don't know what Amanda Griggs will say. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't notice your hand, Amanda. Go ahead. You're on mute at the moment.
There we go. That's better. Just going to agree with Channing that we normally go between 5 and 10% for the smokers. Having been there is quite a lot of room outside, so they would be able to accommodate them quite easily. So I did have a walk around with Neil on Monday. So the outside space, there is quite a lot there. So they're easy to cordon off a space specifically for the smokers. So there is plenty of room for that, and it is at the back of the building and away from the residential bits, so that should be okay. So,
okay.
But yeah,
so let's stick with 20 then, shall we? Everybody seems to be reasonably happy with that. Good. There are two other areas that I'm keen to discuss. One is the saunas, because I do need to be clear about what the situation is with regard to the licensing on the saunas, and I would also like to discuss the dispersal policy as well, because the dispersal policy as written at the moment is aiming very much at a 5 a.m. Sort of dispersal. I mean, getting and it might be that we might need to have another look at that. So let's talk about the saunas first, shall we? Channing said that saunas in Hackney are a licensable or activity. You're saying, Neil, that because they're mobile, that's not the case. Is that what your contention is?
Yes, that's correct. I should be able to get some of the correspondence from the sauna CIC that they've had with Hackney Council already on that.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's not a spa. It's not. They're all kind of mobile sauna units.
Okay. If that documentation, I think we would need to see, as well as the other documentation that we've asked for. And if we don't see it, then we would anticipate that you would have to get licenses for those saunas pretty swiftly.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Now, the dispersal policy, there are elements of the dispersal policy that I liked. There were some elements that I thought were frankly exaggerated. When you say the area is well served by transport, I don't think it is very well served by transport. I particularly don't think it's well served by transport after midnight. But since at this point we're not looking at before midnight, I think we can say it isn't badly served until midnight. So that's good. But the bits that I liked about it were the idea about keeping people inside until to avoid crowds and what have you. Is that something which you think you're still going to be able to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that we engage with clients is in a really friendly way. So, I mean, like our security and our door staff are always, basically the way we do it is, as you say, we ask them to ask any customers, is like, have a nice evening, do you know how you're getting home? And if they don't know, say, oh, we'll take a seat inside in the warm, and whatever, maybe even there's coffee as well if you like. So it's just a really friendly way to make sure that people leave with ease, which obviously means they're not shouting. It means they're kind of comfortable and not angry or aggressive or anything like that when leaving. They're just like, they just had a really enjoyable evening, and that's it. It also gives kind of that nice chance for people to kind of calm down a little bit after dancing around, or after, you know, maybe there's a band or whatever it is. It's like a calming effect on the evening, especially with a bit of coffee or something to help sober up if they have kind of drunk anything. So I mean, that's how we have always kind of treated people. I think it's a much more respectful way to send them on the way. It also gives us, so we're very much aware. So we're a queer friendly venue, and our security and our staff, many are neurodiverse, many are queer, and we have a keen eye on observation, especially protection of women. And so it allows us and our security to just have a little bit more of an eye over people before they leave. So it is quite an important part of how we operate.
Channing, I was going to come to you anyway, actually, you and Amanda, just to ask for your comments on the dispersal policy and if you think it will work in the new circumstances that we're looking at.
Chair, I think the dispersal policy, I think the sort of easy way around this is if the committee were minded to include a condition whereby the premises has a written dispersal policy that's agreed with the police and the licensing authority, and then the operator could draft a new dispersal policy sort of in conjunction with both the responsible authorities, and that way there will be a adequate dispersal policy for the premises. And
I think that's a really good idea. I hope Neil will agree that that's a good idea.
I think that's really good, because also hopefully that means that maybe there's a good document that other people can utilize as well.
Yeah, good. Okay, well let's leave it that there will be a written dispersal policy which will be agreed between yourselves and the police and the licensing authority. I am slightly concerned that leaves us in a sort of slightly strange situation with regard to this weekend, if you're wanting to have events this weekend. So perhaps
the police have got a condition that they've proposed about staff, SIA staff, which was circulated, and it says SIA door supervisors will be employed on an operational risk assessment basis wherever licensable activity is taking place, and always when licensable activity is to finish after midnight. All door supervisors shall enter their full detailed premises, daily register to the at the commencement of work. They shall record their full names, etc. So it's a standard condition for SIA on a risk assessment basis. So that's what will be the condition that will be applied from the police for now. Is that sufficient?
I think that probably works with what Neil's got in mind anyway for the SIA with your security company. Is that right, Neil?
Yes, absolutely.
Good. So we can put that condition in about SIA, and it will.
Yeah, that will be part of the police conditions that have been submitted.
Yeah.
Chair, the only other condition, I don't know, I looked through the conditions that were on the report, and although we have agreed now to have quarterly meetings, is it quarterly meetings? Is that
we
okay?
haven't agreed how often. Actually, that's the next thing on my agenda. I mean,
for them to have a condition to display their contact details. That's the only other thing I thought.
That's a standard condition, basically, that contact details should be on display, so that if somebody does want to make a complaint, and indeed a phone number.
It's the standard one that has an email, phone number, and everything.
Yeah.
To contact in case of complaints.
That's absolutely fine. I think pretty much the entire neighbourhood has my phone number anyway. So.
Good. So contact on display. Now, the other thing with regard to the regular meetings with residents, I mean, quarterly seems quite onerous to me. Okay. I'd be inclined to say 6 monthly, okay. But Neil, you know, if you are seriously thinking about coming back for a variation, you might want to do it more regularly than that in the meantime. just so that you've got some hard evidence to bring to us about what residents are saying.
Yeah.
So-
We actually have really regular meetings with residents anyway. It's not specifically about licensing, but there's always space for them to have that. It's not necessarily always on set days. It's organised with Gordon Fryer and others based on their own kind of schedules. So it's not always regular, but we probably have them.
Well, the way these things usually work is that they are set sometime in advance, and there's some publicity. The venue is decided. It could be on site with you, or it could be in the pensioners club. I don't know, but the venue is decided, and it's publicised in advance so that everybody knows about it and can make arrangements to get there if they want to be there. So it's along those sorts of lines that we're talking about at a meeting. So it's a formal residents meeting, and personally, I don't know, Richard, what do you think? Do you think 6 monthly is enough, or do you think we should
4
be...
months? 4 months, if not 3.
3,
Yeah.
4 might be more.
3 times
less
a year.
onerous.
3 times a year. Yeah.
3 times a year.
I don't mind them being quarterly. I can include them in kind of like our quarterly community general meetings as well. So I don't mind them being quarterly, really.
3 months or 4 months? Every 3 months or 4 months?
Yeah, I would caution against saying I'm going to include them in our regular meetings for other things, because these are specific meetings for residents to come and talk about how they're engaging with you and you're engaging with them. So there's not anything else on the agenda for these meetings. That's what the meeting is.
That's fine then. In which case, if we do 4 months and then we do it less.
Okay. Good.
May I just add that one of the things I'm looking to do is adopt what they're calling a warm space for these premises in the winter. It's like well, they call it a warm bank, for like a food bank for when people can't afford their heating. This would also extend to a cool space in the summer when we have record temperature and people need, air conditioning or fans that they won't be able to run.
Very much what happened this
Very much the engagement policy for this will be something that we can actually see about the dispersal policy and any concerns that our very local residents have about noise or anything else to do with the venue. I think that communication is generally the answer to most problems. And if we do that, we can actually minimise any irritation or any upset from local residents. I am a local resident, and I'm invested in making sure that my fellow local residents don't have a problem.
Good. And obviously we welcome at the moment things like warm banks and cool banks, just so we're assuming they're talking about during the daytime there.
It could be any time, because people could be freezing to death or dying of heat. But again, this is what we're trying to do with this space. This is why we need the licenses, in order to subsidise this sort of behaviour, because we don't get subsidised by anybody else.
The other thing that we haven't mentioned here is acoustic report. We're going to need...
Yeah, that will take some time, I think, for them to obtain. So I don't know if you want to just put a time frame, though, of when they need to otherwise it gets left.
Yeah. Could we say that we would anticipate an acoustic report from you, I don't know, within 2 months? Is that doable?
I think that's reasonable. In the meantime, I'd be happy to supply any decibel readings for past events, if that helps as well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the acoustic...
Generally put a noise condition, like noise at nearest noise sensitive premises. Is that...
I think...
This is for you, this is for Channing.
Sorry.
Yeah. Channing or Amanda?
Chair, we could include that sort of condition if the committee was minded to. We just have to be careful about the wording, because some of them with the old wording means that they're unenforceable. So it would have to be along the lines of audible nuisance to nearest premises. But typically, again, environmental protection would usually make these kind of submissions or requests.
I think the truth is that if we ended up after the acoustic report getting complaints about noise, we'd be looking to have a look at this license again anyway, probably, wouldn't we?
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah.
Amanda, can you suggest a condition?
We can, but again, I would be cautious about what we use in case it's not appropriate for that particular premises. So I probably also want to check if that condition's okay with the environmental protection team. So this is the only condition I think that we need to check carefully that it is worded appropriately. I'll have to come back to you about that, Chair. So
how do we do it for this meeting then, Amanda? Do we say come back to us within 2 months or something like that?
no, well, we've asked for the acoustic report to be within 2 months. That's going to be done.
Okay.
But you're saying you want a separate noise condition, don't you? So I need to check to see what we can use. So if you can bear with me for a few minutes, I'll have a look. See.
Chair, I mean,
I think
one
May,
way
may I
to
share?
look at it is
just 1 second. Channing's just speaking first.
we can perhaps make them refresh the acoustic report maybe on an annual basis or an 18-month basis, so it's always up to date. That might be a way of mitigating some concerns that may come from noise emanating from the premises.
Okay. Amanda Griggs also had something to say, I think.
Yeah, just quick. I thought there was something earlier agreed by environmental protection, but that was about waste and stuff like that. So ignore me. I haven't found what
Okay.
I thought I saw.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Neil.
It's only environmental enforcement. Yes, it's about waste only. Yeah.
And Neil?
Thank you. So yeah, Channing is right. The wording in this is often not clear. For example, we used to have one at Stour Space which was 75 decibels, 1 meter from outside the door, which is kind of strange, but that's what it was. And we amended that internally anyway, based on being on a canal and therefore a sound corridor and things like that. The license that we have, the other license that we have of a venue in Tower Hamlets has, so they said that when negotiating this with them, we didn't need an acoustic report because they had a general rule. I think it was for festivals are allowed to go up to 75 decibels at the closest residence, outside the closest residence door. Now, I think in the application, I think we put, that's not in front of me right now, I think we put 65 to make sure it was within that, because obviously festivals are much larger anyway. Generally, when there's been festivals on the park, like, it overpowers everything. So yeah, I mean, that was what worked there, and they were happy with that without the report. I'm happy to get a report within 2 months. I'd prefer not to have to get one every year or 2 years, just because they are quite expensive. The original report we had in Stour was like £2,500, and it was stipulated by the authority to get it from a certain friend of theirs, and it was all a bit sus. But yeah, I'm happy to get an acoustic report, but I also think it's probably quite wise to make sure that we go way within what is normally accepted for closer residences, which was that 65 was, it's the cars and talking is quieter than that. Sorry, it's louder than that. Sorry, but that's what we're happy to work with, because we're pretty confident in our.
Okay, well, I think we're waiting to hear from Amanda. So,
Amanda, did you want to say
sorry,
something?
Chair, I haven't found a condition yet that's applicable. What I want to check with the applicant, are there windows and doors that they can close at a set time or anything, or that this isn't sort of a venue that has the windows and doors? Because we could we have a condition where we can require them to keep windows and doors closed after a set time in the evening to prevent noise breakout. Is that what you're thinking of? And also, does the applicant have like a noise limiter or anything like that?
Yeah, so a few. So do let me know if I did miss something off. So there's double glazing throughout the hall, and there's also acoustic foam on the windows up there as well. They're not openable windows at the top. There's 2 fire escapes. One is close to the Sheldon Square, which we keep closed anyway. Now, it is a fire escape, so obviously it's occasionally kind of someone might go at that side, but we keep a really tight control on it. So we make sure the doors are closed from when we close the garden, basically. And then so that gives you a good time limit of what you read anyway. And they're not allowed to be open except in emergency, which is an emergency, then the music's off anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, so we don't allow those doors to be open, and we direct people back through the building, through the east wing, which then takes them to the smoking area, and that gives us and our security, our team, constant oversight of how people are moving, the condition of them, and how they're behaving as well. So that's already kind of, I suppose, taken care of within how we operate it. But we're happy to have that written in as well.
Did you
So
say
if we-
those doors and windows
noise foam? Did you say noise foam? Was it one of the things you said?
Acoustic.
Yes, there's acoustic foam.
Acoustic
stuck
foam.
to the
Yeah.
windows.
So we can put a condition in to say that the doors should be closed except for emergencies from 10 p.m. and that's something you can live with quite happily by the sound of things.
Absolutely, yeah. We already do that often earlier.
Good. Can I just also just say, just so that we don't miss this out, that the application for the new year will be struck out as well.
Oh, yes, you mean non-standard hours to be taken out.
Mm.
That's what you mean, yes? Yeah, I've already
Yeah.
put a note for that. I've already put that down. Non-standard
And
hours.
so it's getting quite late now. I've been up since 4 a.m. Apologies. But the core licensing that's till midnight on
No, we
Fridays and
need to
Saturdays.
confirm the hours, Chair, about the core hours for the whole week.
So I believe core hours are so Monday to Thursday is till 11, Friday and Saturday is midnight, and Sunday is 10:30.
Yeah.
That's, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that right, Channing?
Yes, I mean,
That's correct, Chair, yeah.
and they're starting, but it says that they've got the different opening time from 12. But yeah, sorry, is there opening time from 8 or from 12 or from 9?
Our standard
It's
opening
different.
hours are
It's
8
different
a.m.
on the, because it's got on here for a number of the licensable activities 9 a.m. till, for example, 1 a.m. I know we're not going to 1 a.m., but I'm just trying to say, so therefore, what does that need to be amended to? The 9 a.m.s are to be amended to what?
Is this so? I think this was.
I'm looking at the hours now that are on the application, the report. Yeah. So we just need to confirm. I know what the core hours are. I'm just trying to ask what these are supposed to be amended to, because the non-standard hours are going to be taken out. The other hours vary. Some of them are 9, and then there's the supply of alcohol is from 11.
Yeah, they do that with.
Yeah, and then at the bottom it's got opening hours of the premises 12 to 23:30. So that's why I'm just trying to check what's.
Sorry, just let me try and find.
On the last set of hours on the report, on the actual agenda, yeah? So we need to make sure those are all correct. Boxing
Sorry,
is
Amanda.
taken out.
Sorry, Amanda, to trouble you. Within the report, the opening hours are quite wrong. So we need to look into the application, which states from 8 to 1, Sunday to Thursday, and from 8 to 5.
Okay,
Right.
sorry, can I make a note of that again? Sorry, could you say that again, please? Sorry.
So the opening hours, what they have provided in the application is from 8 to 1, Sunday to Thursday,
Sunday to Thursday, yeah,
and from 8 to 5, Friday and Saturday.
8 to 5. 5 a.m. you're talking about then?
That's right. Yeah, that's what stated within the application. Yeah.
Friday and Saturday. Okay, yeah. So what I need to know what I'm going to be amending all that to.
I guess it would fit within core hours.
Right. So just the core
But
hours.
with
You're happy with the core
around
hours for all of those
11.
days? Yeah. Standard. Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
is the start time for
So
core hours then, Amanda?
So
then
Sunday is also till
Sunday's till
11
10:30 though. 10:30. Yes, but that's the thing. What is the starting time? You're still starting at 8, or are you?
So we always open doors at 8 a.m. I mean, we may go earlier sometimes just to catch an early morning coffee rush up to Hear East, for
I
example.
don't think we can go
But obviously, it's
before.
not licensable. Activity.
Super, sorry to trouble you again, but although the opening hours you've just told me are meant to be 8 till 1 and 8 till 5 for all the days, in terms of what's been published and everything, we can't go beyond 8 then, earlier than 8, because obviously
No.
it's been published. But
No.
because it's not
So-
on the actual report, so what do we do? Is it
No, Amanda, because the thing is, there was an error within the report with the
okay,
opening
it's
up.
in the application? Okay,
So we had to stick with the application, what was
Right.
stated on the application.
okay, right. So then they can have from 8 in the morning, or should it be 9?
Well,
That's
since they asked for 8, I don't see any particular problem with 8. I mean, you know,
8. Okay, and then just
do you see a
editing of
problem with
4
8,
hours.
Richard? No. Okay. So
Sorry,
eight,
can you say that again?
8 and then close at core hours.
Yeah, 8. Okay.
Good. I think we've managed to rattle through this and pretty much knock this into shape that's workable. Perhaps I could just double check that Channing's happy with that.
Can I just say, well done, Chair?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
you know, I mean, we're trying to do our best for you, Neil. We can see that what you're trying to
No,
offer
thank
is a service that's valuable and no doubt valued by local people, and we don't want to lose it. But on the other hand, you know, we also do have to respect the policies that we've got to. Channing, are you happy with where we've got to with this?
Chair, if the premises are going to be operating within core hours and the external area, if the capacity is going to be clarified and limited down from 500, then it alleviates a large volume of the concerns I had. If the committee is minded to grant the license, then I look forward to discussing the dispersal policy with the applicant and seeing any sort of acoustic report. Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. That was very nicely put as a kind of closing comment. So if we can take that as your closing comment, that's great. If we could have any closing comments from Amanda first and then Howard, please.
I'll just reiterate what Channing said, I think. Yeah, happy to obviously have those discussions regarding the dispersal policy. I think there's bits in place that are fine. We're obviously more than happy with core hours. We support them doing that and hope that supports the venture going forward. But yeah, quite happy, and say echo again what Councillor Lufkin said about well done of getting through it all, Chair.
Thank you. And Howard?
Thank you, Chairman. I look forward to receiving the subcommittee's approval advice and conditions, and also look forward to the information that's been advised that's been submitted as part of that application.
Yeah, thank you. I should point out that it is very important that we get those documents, Neil. Amanda?
Yes, just to clarify, we're talking about capacity being 350 now for the whole premises. Yes?
We are talking about 350, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah. So Neil, it's down to you now for your closing comments.
Firstly, thank you to everyone for taking the time out, and I do appreciate it has taken longer than probably expected. I appreciate the effort you've all gone into to support this. Yeah, that means a lot, and I hope that we can essentially create some documents and files that can be replicated as a standard, which is what we aim to achieve. So thank you. I appreciate all the work that you guys have done on this. Thanks. And thank you for conducting that.
I'd just like to add that we're trying to make it like it's grown-ups in charge now of all the potential problems with the residents, and we'll be working with them and many other partner organisations to make this the best space we can with the least problems.
Lovely. Well, I mean, I very much hope that it succeeds. Gareth, you wanted to say something?
Just a small point of accuracy for the minutes, Chair. Martin, I caught your first name, but I didn't catch your surname.
Sanderson.
What was that, sorry?
Sanderson, S-A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N.
Sanderson, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Lovely. Councillor Lufkin, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close? You're on mute at the moment. So
No, nothing for me. Thanks very much, everybody.
Okay, can I thank everybody for their patience? I think that we've managed to work through to something which I hope will be workable and indeed will allow the baths to flourish in the future. So thanks very much, everybody, and everyone is free to go apart from those who know they have to stay, just to finish off the admin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.